Going live.
Welcome to the Sci-Fi Sci Podcast. It's a show about black science fiction and fantasy and helping us stay on the same page as a family. You get it? Because we turned the page. Anyway, today for episode 113, we'll be discussing the FX show Kindred, which is available to stream on Hulu, and it's based off the book by Octavia Butler by the same name. Now, we read the book for the very first episode of the podcast, which launched 2 years ago. So we were very excited. It was like a full circle moment to see that Kindred was showing as a TV show on FX. So we're excited to get into that. We know we haven't seen y'all in a hot minute, or y'all know y'all haven't heard from us in a hot minute, but guess what? We ain't sorry. We was enjoying the holidays, right, baby?
We were enjoying the holidays and also not enjoying the holidays simultaneously. Because not all holidays are enjoyable.
Yes, I was like, dang.
Every single moment.
I was like, dang, drag your mama.
Oh, no, my mom is great, but Southwest was not.
Yes. Canceled flights, you know. I'm not going to harp on it because there was so much good during our holiday, but we had a time trying to get back to LA, but guess what? We made it back. I'm happy to be here because we kind of left people to watch this show, and then we were like, we're gonna hear from y'all tomorrow, and then we disappeared, but we're back and we're excited to do this. But before we get into it, we just got to shout out those of you out there. If you are listening even this far into this podcast, we love you and we thank you. But if you would like to give a little bit more to the Wallin fam, join the Patreon. We drop the episodes there. We do yoga classes on Sunday, and we just get to do some behind the scenes stuff. We are really going to rev up some of that Patreon content. I have so many things in the drafts that I need to just edit and submit. But anyway, special shout out to the patrons: Shania, Kendall, Skater, Aaron Neek, Runna, Latoya, Brittany, and Jasmine. And remember, the link to the Patreon is in the episode notes if you want to give $1, $2, $5 a month. Now, Ben, talk to us about the Christmas. It was your family's year, and it was our first Christmas with Itty Bitty.
It was. So one of the big decisions we made this year was to stay in a hotel instead of staying with my parents, and it was really nice.
Setting boundaries.
Setting boundaries is pretty fantastic and very critical in having a good time. And so my parents have a lot of grandkids, and they do a lot, so we figured that this may be nice to remove ourselves. And it was nice because if we got too tired, because hanging out with anybody for long times, for me, I get really tired. So I just want to leave and go read a book or like, have loud sex inside, the room without bothering anybody.
Correct.
Because I think us having loud sex might
shake up your parents a little bit. They're pretty religious.
Well, no, they wouldn't care. I mean, they would just be
they wouldn't care. That is not true.
They're not for religious reasons, because we're married. We're bound together.
I know, but there's still something vulgar about it, Like,
I don't think.
Like, even in the church, when you're like married and happy and have a healthy sex life, then it's still a problem if you're doing some other things. If you're having some like spicy choices in the bedroom.
Well, no, I mean, I don't know if you can hear our spicy choices in the bedroom. I mean, maybe you could hear the spicy choices. Can you hear spicy choices in the bedroom? I think
you can hear some choices being made in that bedroom. But yeah, we decided to stay in a hotel, which was just super nice because then the family could come over and swim in the pool and things like that. So I had a great time. Now, getting back was just hell. We had to drive 2 hours. Ben's family is from upstate New York. So then we had to drive 2 hours to Newark because there were no flights coming out of New York. It was a mess. We're back. And now we're just settling back into our home and just like decluttering. We're hosting a shit ton of people, but it's a good time. I love just like a rush of people during the holidays. Like, I fuck with that. Sometimes you need your house back for like a day or two, but I fuck with it.
Yeah, my sister and her husband came, and they got our shit together. They're very organized. He was in the Marines, which he doesn't like to talk about. He was in the Marines because he told me that it's annoying how many people think that just because they went through the Marines, they're this like badass group of people and they can sort of be mean and disrespectful. So he doesn't really mention
last night
that.
He was like, there are so many ill-equipped people in the military. He would say, I would say about 50%. I was like, okay, tell all. Not a tell all. Let me get my phone out.
Yeah, he's like, anyway, he's sort of a funny dude, but he helped us he's a bodybuilder. He can like bench press like well over 300, and he like helped us put off this huge TV mounted.
Yeah, just
we don't want
stuff
it falling
up, shelves.
on. Yeah, we don't want it falling on itty bitty baby. And
yeah, we're adults.
Yeah, we're
adults, bitch.
Yeah, adults who get their in-laws to help them do things. That's like the most adult thing, right?
Yeah. Well, here's the thing about it. And this is like if you have kids, if you don't, if you're close to family, if you don't, everybody has a strength, okay?
Yeah.
My strengths lie in content creating, video editing, getting all your angles, taking great pics of people. And some people's strengths really lie in like you open their pantry and every single piece of pasta is in the right place. Like, so I fuck with people like that. That's I like having that in my home, but I don't know how to start that process. Their home.
Like everything was like organized. Like they had an island that was just completely cleared. And I think some of that was sort of the training of the military because they make their bed every single day. Like, yeah, it's like what? Like,
so when they stay in our house, they make their bed every day in our guest room. So we're like, damn, we should make our bed.
Yeah,
but it was a good time having them there, and I just love learning from. Because, you can sometimes feel like we know better than everybody in this family. Now, there was a time when your family was having a riveting conversation about the Panera bread in town and can you believe this Panera bread doesn't have carpet like the last one? I was like, y'all are killing me.
They moved the Panera bread from one side of the street to the other side of the street.
And there was,
Yeah.
There was an uproar in the community. I'm just kidding.
Yeah, no. A lot of people were talking about it.
A lot of people were talking about the carpets being different from the drapes at the Panera, down at the Panera bread.
You know what other people are talking about as well? Our show. They're talking about our show.
They're talking about our show.
They're writing reviews on Apple Podcast Review, which is another great way that you can support our show. So why don't you go ahead and read these 2 fantastic reviews? Go for it.
Okay, Amber. I want to preface by saying our Wakanda Forever episode is still pretty popular. So every now and then we'll get some reviews like just specifically about that one. And I'll take it. If you take the time out of your day to write an Apple Podcast review on our bitch asses, I'll take it. So this one's from My82. I love you guys. So I want to jump right into the topic at hand. While I haven't seen the movie yet, y'all kill me with this. I feel like the point is, this is about Wakanda Forever. I feel like the point is that all villains aren't black and white. It's realistic to me if you believe that we all started out with clean slates and became dirty over time and circumstances versus you were damned from the beginning, which is why politicians exist because someone deems him a saint or someone else deems him a demon. That is the human conflict of understanding that we ourselves are multidimensional and allowing others to be that as well. I love this show. Keep up the good work. Okay, a couple things to dive into here. Number 1. Thank you for writing a review, Me82.
Thank you.
Number 2, we agree that villains should be layered and nuanced, right? We love that. We love the Joker. Number 3, this movie just didn't do that well. They didn't Joker the situation well. Would you? We've spoke on it.
Yeah, you can listen to it. I really don't understand this person's point in this review. I'm just glad they wrote a 5-star review. So.
Well, they messed up because they prefaced by saying, while I haven't seen the movie, that was where you messed up. Because I bet if you saw the movie, you would be like, oh, I see what they were trying to do with this villain origin story. It just didn't hit like it was supposed to. The villain wasn't villaining like it was supposed to, but that's okay. Thank you for writing a review. You want to read the next one?
Yeah, I'll read the next one. This is from Genesis Speedy.
Okay.
Can't wait to read. Just listen to the Space Between Worlds episode without reading the book. But now I will definitely be reading it. Thanks for sharing your thoughts on all kinds of stories and things. Helps doing things like cleaning and schoolwork way more fun. Yay!
Yes! Okay. Once again, you need to read the book. I'm just kidding.
Yeah, once again.
Why aren't y'all reading, writing, and arithmeticking?
I never understand why people are just mean to the people who compliment them, even if they sort of miss a point here or there.
I know. I'm sorry, Me82.
Thank you,
Don't take anything I say seriously.
And I actually agree with what you say that people, start out as clean slates. I don't believe in original sin. We're born evil and sinful. So.
Oh my gosh, Ben, I have to show you this. Sound off if y'all have been hearing about this. There's some documentary that happened and might have been filmed in 2000. It was this social experiment with a group of girls and a group of boys, okay? And these kids that were given a week's worth of cooking courses and stuff like that. And looked this up somewhere, and they were basically filmed in separate houses to see how long they could just sort of survive and make their own little hierarchies. It's a group of girls and a group of boys. Okay. And so you see footage of these boys just sort of, being a little chaotic and falling apart. Now, I want to preface by saying I haven't seen all of this. I saw like a 3-minute TikTok, which was the trailer for the movie. I want to preface by saying, yes, boys alone or girls alone or something like that. And you get to observe these two different, genders in these homes. And what you see is the boys completely being chaotic and falling apart. And you see the girls like saying, okay, let's get a chore wheel together. Like they just taught us last week how to cook and things like that. And so it really wasn't an experiment that was based on like, oh, well, see, girls are just better at things. Da, 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 da. It was an experiment based in like, what are the expectations and responsibilities that we put on girls versus boys? And then what happens when we have these group of little kids, girls and boys? What happens then when the majority of our world leaders are then just men? So if we literally watch these kids and we set different expectations and raising our girls, why then does that not translate to the job force and the workforce?
Yeah.
So it's a really cool documentary. Did you find the name of it as you just researched it?
Yeah.
Is it called Boys Alone?
Yeah,
or Girls
I believe
Alone?
so. Boys Alone.
Boys Alone. Y'all look that up. Let me know if y'all saw that. But it was just so fascinating to see these boys. Like, it was more sad to see the boys because they would just be shaking in the corner like, well, what are we supposed to do for food? What are we supposed to do for that? And the girls were like, okay, Kimmy, you can do. It was so interesting. Check that out. I don't know where I was going with that. Oh, we're not born just knowing or not knowing how to do things. Like, we all start with a clean slate.
Right. Yeah. And then we're socially conditioned where there is the belief that we're born evil and sinful, and then, Jesus has to help us.
Right.
Get better at organizing.
Got you. Okay. So if you've been listening this far, do you want to talk about Kindred now? Because we are one, we're very excited. And two, I feel like we told everybody we knew to watch this with us. So we have to get to the money.
Yeah. And for those who haven't seen this show, you can still listen and enjoy this part of the podcast. So I'll give you a quick plot summary. So the story is about this woman, Dana, who's recently moved to LA to pursue a career in television writing. Sound familiar? Maybe. I don't know. Maybe it's sort of our experience. Except we're not time traveling. Anyway, she goes on a date with a really chill dude with this like really groggy, deep voice. And his name's Kevin. And then she is pulled back in time, on the day of the date after they sleep over together. She's pulled back in time to the antebellum South. And then this story sort of follows her and her first date, Kevin, attempting to navigate the horrors of American slavery, because at some point, Kevin is also pulled back with her.
Yes.
So that's sort of the premise. And you can listen to episode 1 so you can hear about our thoughts on Kindred, the book that this TV show is based on. So some of the things that they changed right away is that this takes place in modern day, right? So the present day is today.
Like
so there's cell phones.
Or so,
yeah, 2000. So there are cell phones and people are able to text, and that sort of has a plot device. I actually preferred that they updated it. And then the other big thing that they changed is that Kevin and Dana in the book have been married for a while.
Right.
And so this is like a first date.
Yeah.
This is a first date.
I like that change too.
I did.
I mean, and I'm sure when it comes to like modernizing it, whenever Octavia Butler published it, that was what was the modern.
Yeah, that was the modern time. Like, so it made sense.
It's like, why did she put this in the 80s? It's like, it was the 80s. Yeah.
I think it might have published in the 70s. But I was thinking, though, imagine going on your first day and now you are pulled back into the antebellum South, and like that is your first date. You have to learn how to role play, because one of the big things is that when they're pulled back, Dana is like, well, Kevin, I have to pretend to be your slave, because
and Kevin's like, I'm uncomfortable with
He's like, I'm uncomfortable with this. And she's like, I am literally a slave. Like,
right. What do you mean you're uncomfortable with it? Like, right. I'm the person in servitude.
There's a lot of moments.
Like, if that was our first, like if we went on one date and then we were pulled back to the antebellum South, that would probably rock things a little bit.
Yeah. At one point, Kevin's like, well, I'm not going back with you once, because we don't really know at one point how she gets back and forth,
right,
and why she's being pulled back and forth, except that she's being pulled back to basically save this little boy at certain points.
Yeah,
Rufus. And he's such a sweet little boy, and he remains sweet. And in the book, by the way, the story of the TV show ends sort of halfway in the book, I would say. So it doesn't cover the TV show doesn't cover the whole book.
Correct, which is the most frustrating thing ever, because if you saw the whole series with us, that last episode, you're like, there's 3 minutes left. Like, how is she going to go back and get Kevin? And then it ends and you're like...
That's the big spoiler, is that at one point, she's the only one who can travel back and forth, right? And at this point, Kevin is left behind.
Right. I thought we were just doing spoilers anyway. We always do spoilers.
Yeah, I just want to explain.
Like, wait.
Yeah, at the end,
they've
been traveling back. No, it's fine.
I got too excited.
No, it's fine. They've been traveling back and forth, and Kevin is left there. And so 3 minutes... we find out, what do we find out?
The last 3 minutes, we're essentially learning like Kevin's been stuck there for like 5 years or something like that. And
time moves differently.
And then the show just stops abruptly. Yeah. And you're just like, we've all seen a cliffhanger and we're like, what do you mean I have to wait? Severance did us like that too. Like, I have to wait for the next season.
Severance.
But it really... Now, there were, I will say... throughout the series, there were some times where I'm like, we could have got some more time on the back end of this final episode where I feel like we're wasting time in these scenes right here. But I thought overall the pacing was really well.
It was well. Oh, the other big difference that they made is that the mom. Yeah,
yes.
Her mother shows up, and her mom is no character in the book. And in this one, she has also, it's sort of inherited this ability to travel back in time, and her mom has traveled back in time and was presumed dead for 20 years or whatever, and now Dana discovers that her mom has been alive and been living and sort of integrating herself into the antebellum cell.
That was a note that I really enjoyed as well, or an upgrade that I really appreciated, just because it kind of reminded me, we've talked a little bit probably in the past about Ghost, the movie with Whoopi Goldberg, starring Patrick Swayze and Demi Moore, but the real star is like Whoopi Goldberg, and she plays Oda Mae Brown, this like psychic, and she talks a little bit in that movie about her mother and her grandmother having this gift of visions and stuff like that. And so she was like, well, they had the gift, but I don't really have it. So let me just like pretend and carry on this family legacy. And then lo and behold, she does find out like, oh, I'm a medium as well. And so it was a nice touch in the show that Dana's mother and possibly her grandmother were having visions and like believed to be, crazy, dismissed as crazy. And then it starts happening to Dana. So I love those moments in a show where you're like, oh, look at the characters having that shared experience. Like I've definitely had shared experiences with my mother, obviously on different timelines. And I'm now like, we're a little bit closer because I know exactly, like now that I'm an adult, I know exactly what you go, or now that I've had a child, I know exactly what you're, whatever. So I really like that addition to the show.
The other thing that I keep on coming back to about this show is that at one point they start to get comfortable, Kevin and Dana living there.
Yes, they do, and it's annoying.
And there's this really weird montage scene because essentially I think the show is trying to show us that Dana having this close relationship with Kevin, it's presumed that because at one point the plantation they're on, Thomas Whalen's plantation,
he's the worst.
He also takes, concubines, slave women, and he sort of keeps one to like warm his bed, essentially. Yeah. And those people sort of receive...
To rape.
To rape. And they receive special treatment. And so it's very clear the show is trying to indicate a hierarchy of which Dana is similarly shown to have that relationship with Kevin. So she's able to stay in the master's house instead of out in the fields. And at one point they're like, oh, this is almost like a resort, right? Because they're sort of
it's the cringiest thing ever.
Horrors of slavery are sort of being hidden from them until the very end. And now we sort of see these moments where these slave masters even the quote unquote good ones, right? Because there's this narrative within the southern states of today that creates a narrative of good slave owners. For example,
they took care of them. They treated them like family. It's like,
Robert
what?
Ely taught his slaves how to read.
Yeah.
So there's these narratives that come out. And I think the TV show is sort of playing with that a little bit.
Right.
And then all of a sudden, Thomas Whalen, who's shown to be a kind slave master at points, turns into this horrific monster who whips Dana in this really, violent, bloody way.
Visceral,
Because they're sort of, it's not, for most of the show, we're not getting 12 years a slave as far as violence and and sort of,
which I can appreciate because we've already seen the horrors of slavery throughout, but they gave us one reminder of like, in case even you at home forgot, like, here is a very vivid reminder of like what's been going on this show, like behind the scenes.
And there was a constant threat of violence,
always,
even if violence wasn't always being done.
Oh, can I say something about that?
Yeah.
Follow me, camera. What you just said, something else that this show added that was a really refreshing update was, so that common threat on the slave plantation, there was always a common threat also in the modern day times, because Dana had a next door neighbor that was basically this like white Karen figure.
Yes, very much. She's a Karen.
Which obviously Karens have always existed. There's always been white people who
they're showing up the zeitgeist now.
Yes,
they're showing up
who have always felt threatened by people of color, black people specifically. So it was really nice for Dana to be a black woman who bought a house, and for her nosy, like white Snoopy neighbors who felt threatened by her to constantly be knocking on the door. To be fair, like Dana was screaming and things like that, but like this neighbor
up with like bruises
would wake up with bruises. So it was under the guise of like, well, we heard screaming, we were really concerned, and then it became like there might be drugs in there, just so you know. So this white neighbor just fully intruding, fully being way more threatening than Dana and Kevin are to her. So I thought that was a really nice gameplay, especially given the culture that we're in now, where it's like phones out. Let's show these Karens going in the wild.
Yeah,
she was such a good actor. I was like, I am so annoyed by this white lady.
The Karen
they
character,
nailed her. Yeah. They got that down.
She also has a husband who's very working out, but at one point there's a confrontation. And Kevin and him sort of fight, like physically get into a confrontation, and it's broken up. But as like, there's a really great line where Kevin's like, "Get away, you Dracula-looking motherfucker," is something that will always stick in my line as a point of dialogue.
Right.
But it does take place in LA, and so
we loved that.
Yeah. So you do have LA is so fascinating because the more I read about the different neighborhoods, you have very specific kinds of people who live in specific kinds of neighborhoods, and obviously like anywhere else, but in this sense, it's a little bit more extreme than I felt in Chicago, simply because the wealth gap in LA is significantly broader than the wealth gap in probably other cities.
Okay.
And so you'll have people living in mansions, like massive mansions. You get obviously you see this in Chicago neighborhoods as well, like
Lincoln Park,
or Lakeview for sure.
If you have like a house in Bucktown or something. Yeah.
But in this way, I think you'll have these really beautiful neighborhoods, but then I don't have my finger directly on it, but I think there's more of a cross-pollination. For example, you'll have a really quiet neighborhood, but then streetcar racers will use that neighborhood to race through. Where in Chicago, you don't really get that because the layer of the city and the policing of the city is sort of done a little bit particularly, where here the police I think are sort of all over the place.
Yeah, it's a huge city, very spread out.
It's so spread out. It's not as congested. Anyway, I think maybe these neighbors might be a little bit particular as far as there's things probably that they're doing that feels very LA that I haven't picked up on. So if you're from LA and you've seen people like these neighbors, let me know. I don't know if it's unique to LA, but
Yeah, it felt just very suburban for me, but
they're like,
I haven't
this
lived
is
in LA
a
forever.
quiet neighborhood. You know, I can't really hear anybody saying that in like Lakeview or Lincoln Park.
No.
And
I mean, to be fair, I haven't lived in those neighborhoods.
There's more, that's the thing. There's more houses in LA.
Right. I can see that
Where
for
like
sure.
Lakeview and Lincoln Park has a lot of townhouses and a lot of condos.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of
condominium.
condos.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of condos in LA.
Yeah.
Or you know,
it feels that way.
Or
we're new here, but it feels that way for sure.
Maybe y'all can correct me if I'm wrong.
At the very least, there's way more just houses. There's houses everywhere. Yeah, but overall, I really, really enjoyed this TV series. I think they had a huge undertaking. Like, obviously, so many people have probably talked about, like,
this
who's
is
going to make
book.
Kindred. Yeah, this is the book to make. And I don't know, this might sound shady, but I got a little worried when I saw that FX was doing it. Like, sometimes they nail things, but sometimes I'm like, I don't know. When I think of like
Legion is a great FX show.
When I think of FX, I think of like some like failed superhero stuff sometimes.
What are you talking about? No, their superhero stuff, Legion, was really well. I think they're a little bit.
It just feels like TV versus like Netflix, HBO Max for me.
FX? Oh no,
FX does
not anymore. I don't think so. FX shows are sort of.
Maybe I'm confusing
really
them with
intense.
like
you might be
CW
maybe TNT
and...
or something. I can.
They made Wednesday?
No. That's something else. I'm looking at like some of their shows so that you can sort of get an idea. Oh, they did Snowfall.
They do Atlanta.
They do Atlanta.
No.
They do What We Do in the Shadows.
I just
American
think if
Horror
you
Story.
Googled right now, like top shows that
Archer.
everybody's watching right now, typically a FX show is not in the top.
Reservation Dogs.
Right.
I think
The Bear was great.
Yeah, they did The Bear.
They do good work. I just needed to be reminded that
Devs.
FX is that girl because I just don't think of.
You might not have seen as many FX. Like I've watched all of Devs. Really great show. We've watched The Bear. We loved The Bear.
Yes.
We've watched Reservation Dogs.
I'm tripping.
And American Horror Story.
Hi, I'm the problem. It's me. Yeah, I needed to separate in my mind FX and like CW.
Maybe FX
in my brain. They were like maybe on a different channel that were like on the like near the same channel.
Yeah, I could see.
You know, because you can tell by the cutting that FX is made for TV.
Yeah, that's true.
So there's something about her. I'm like, why are they stopping this scene? I'm like, oh, that's the like stop and then the start for the commercial break. And I'm like, what is this? Like, this isn't TV. Come on, like get with the other streaming programs. But excuse me, I'm tripping.
Changing the subject a little bit, talking about kids. The story sort of centers around Dana having to go back to save Rufus, this boy who's going to inherit this plantation every so often. That's
the worst. He's such a little shit.
Yeah. Well, at first he's really connected with Dana, and at one point he feels such an affiliation with her that one of his friends, this little girl, comes in and sees him connecting or playing with his slaves. I put quote or unquote. And this little girl says, "Oh, are you still playing with your slaves?" I totally outgrew that. And there's this really horrific scene where this little girl tells Dana to come over to her so she can slap her. Like, come on. And the little girl is trying to teach this little boy how to deal with slaves and make sure that they're treated like subhuman and dogs.
That was a very intense scene. Yeah.
And it sort of made me think of the way parenting was done back then. There's all these just horrific things of parenting because I'm reading lots of parenting books. So gentle parenting wasn't a thing in the antebellum South. Surprise, surprise. And instead it was like, gentle
parenting ain't a thing in the South.
Yeah. but it's because Dana at one point has this conversation with Kevin when they're stuck in the antebellum South where Dana's like, "Oh, I can change Rufus and I could," because Kevin ends up teaching him piano and they think for a moment that they could maybe raise this child so that he can free the slaves when he gets older and inherits the plantation. And I think the foil to that is when we're introduced to another child who is truly just evil. And you're like,
yes.
oh,
or who has been taught to be evil. Yes.
The way the slavery system worked in America is that it was inherited, and you trained your children to treat at a young age, to treat slaves as subhuman. It was just
yes.
in the...
That's what they do now with their kids, but
right, yeah.
Not like slaves, obviously, but they train their children to be like, you know, we're better than them, we're whatever than them, but like go to school and interact with these people. Like they might want you to use different pronouns, but you know better in this house. You know, just whatever the rhetoric is.
Something that's sort of I mean, for me as like a modern viewer, is that there are these moments where you have like intimacy between slave owner and slave, whether just as far as like a friendship. And at one point, all the little there are slave children who come in and they put on like this Christmas play.
Yeah.
And then they throw like fruit at them. They're like, "Oh, aren't they so cute?" And they're sort of treating them with an affinity and an affection. And then on the next scene, you'll see them, you know, degrading them or whipping them or raping them or beating them.
They're still...
And sort of it's this psychotic...
But it's animalistic.
Yeah.
What do you do to an animal? You throw a treat on the ground and let them go fetch it. Like that. Yeah. Nothing about what they did treated them with kindness, like in that scene.
Right.
You know, like making them
but
dance.
In their mind, it's seen as like the slave owner's minds.
Like, oh, we're so kind to them.
We're kind. No. We're treating them. And it's just absolutely horrific.
Yes. And I think
when they put them in juxtaposition between that.
I think this show did sort of what Django did a little bit. It was like, obviously Django and this movie or show showed horrific scenes that we've already seen, but they also did a good job of showing us things about slavery that we haven't really seen, that were just as cringy, just as dehumanizing, just as subhuman, as you were saying, like that Christmas play. Like, I don't think I've ever seen somebody like make their slaves like put on a play like with their children or anything like that. But of course that happened. Or it's like the Mandingo fights in Django. You're like, oh my God. Like, not only did you have these people in servitude, you made them like fight like dogs. Like, I really hadn't seen any other, I'm sure I just need to read more, to be honest, because I'm sure those different ways, besides obviously like raping and whipping slaves as a form of discipline and cutting off limbs and things like that, I knew about, but I didn't know about also like making people tap dance and all of those kinds of things. And I don't know, it just, I think that just added a little bit more of like not as violent scenes, because, you know, when it comes, like we've talked about this with Tanana Reeve, like we don't need to see more violence of black bodies, but they did some really good storytelling there of some other things that made us uncomfortable as viewers, and I think they did a really, really good job with this series.
They also do this thing where Thomas Whalen, the plantation owner, sort of presents himself as being brotherly to another character, Luke.
Yes,
who is sort of his
main overseer.
He's a black overseer,
the foreman. Yes,
the foreman. And they have this brotherly sort of understanding between each other until at one point Luke speaks out, and then Whalen immediately sells him to a different person. And so you're like, oh, like it's just
that level
fake.
Of we're best friends. It's
so
like
fake.
No, it kind of reminded me of like a little bit of like Driving Miss Daisy. It's like, you're my friend, but I'm not your friend.
Yeah. It's so baffling.
You understand?
No, yeah, okay. I do, yeah, and that.
Yeah, it's like
Daisy thinks that Morgan Freeman is her friend.
Yes.
Like, no, like you pay me, I'm your servant.
Yeah, like, but you would never invite me to your house outside of this. Right. Correct.
Right. No, I understand what you're saying. But I think this show is fantastic. There's a great Target.
Oh, so good.
There's a great Target, Walgreens, Walmart sort of advertising. So basically at one point, Kevin, to sort of keep his mind grounded that the fact that reality does exist in a future, he repeats over and over again Target, Walgreens, Walmart, which I thought was
that's nice,
sort of a weird way of putting in an advertising. Like, I wonder if Target, Walgreens, and Walmart paid to have their names put in.
Probably. You know how things go these days. But one other thing I really enjoyed, and this is more so Octavia Butler's doing than it was this show's doing. I really enjoy how Octavia Butler, as Dana is jumping time, I really enjoy, I mean, this might sound sick of me, but it has a point, I promise, that the wounds from the past are still very present. Like, if she got whipped in the past, when she jumps back, she still has those scars on her, and that is how slavery is. And we read that, like, Darkly book about the keloid and the scar that is slavery from past to present. And I know a lot of people don't feel that, and a lot of people don't know that that's present, but
slavery still is felt today
in everything we do. Yes.
In our institutions, and even our language.
Correct. Yes.
Our traditions.
Yes, it is the foundation, the brick that is laid that has created this country. And I think Octavia Butler did a really great job with not just like, because she could have easily, I don't know, just not had Dana had those same things when she's jumped time.
It becomes a powerful symbol, I think.
It does. Very.
And it becomes much more relevant to what's happening even today. I guess, like, if any size, one of the size that I wish some of the themes were sort of tied in a little bit more with the themes that Americans are wrestling for today, as far as like race relations, and sort of, I wish there was sort of more of a direct connection, because it's more symbolic, you know?
Yeah, but I feel like that would have been too preachy. Get specific on what you mean.
I don't know. I mean, I'm not a creator.
Do you think they should have done it in like 2023 or was it that it was in 2016? Like, because you saying it today, because I think they did a good job with the whole Karen bit.
They show
like, that felt very relatable.
Karen, I'm not sure where else I would have wanted them to take it.
Or like, I met a guy on a dating app and who gave me a ride home, and then we're hanging out, and now he's jumping back with me. Like, I don't know, all of that stuff felt very like current and relevant.
Yeah. I guess the other side is that
I still am unclear about your first side. Like, what was an example of something?
I maybe like connecting police brutality with today, connecting gaslighting of, racial injustice with what was happening back then.
Got you.
There is a nice part where when someone time travels or sort of has a supernatural experience in these kinds of stories, there's someone immediately gaslighting them. I'm glad.
Yeah, I definitely thought that happened.
Yeah, I'm glad they didn't necessarily do that, because Kevin, after their first date, like, sees her disappear when he stays the night, because they both connect with each other, because both of them are orphans, which I thought was a nice way of explaining their immediate connection with each other and affinity, and the fact that Kevin would stay. He feels very connected with this woman. They're both orphans.
Yeah, there was definitely a point where Kevin's like, I'm not jumping back with you. And I was like, I don't fucking blame him. Yeah. Like, girl, I don't know you like that. Fair. This is our first date. Like, I don't know. If the shoe was on the other foot, I probably wouldn't jump back.
Maybe a little bit more direct connection with police brutality and gaslighting, as far as like,
maybe the police could have broken into her house a little bit more aggressively, and you've been like, this is how they do and how they act.
Perhaps the
or
other
like
thing
with
is that it is lower budget. Like, you can tell the set designs are not as clear or crisp as something.
Drag.
No, it's just not. It's just not. In the same way that we saw with the Underground Railroad or other stories.
I feel like that's what I was trying to say when I was saying it's given TV, CW. So lower budget was just the rhetoric I did.
Yeah, lower budget.
I think they did whatever their budget was, I think they did a really good job with it.
For me, it was clearly not shot in the South. Like, the scenes, it felt like upstate New York or something, or New England was the actual set. Where it was supposed to take place in the antebellum South. But again,
that's
these
fair
are like,
criticism.
I'm nitpicking. I hope this show gets a bigger budget.
I also feel like if we're gonna keep nitpicking, I feel like Rufus was a little bit more of a little asshole in the book.
I think
in the book
again,
like I hated Rufus reading the book, whereas here I'm kind of like,
he just
wants to be read to by Dana. Like, no, where's when he's like kind of cussing her out a little bit?
I think that happens.
And we watched Rufus. We watched Rufus grow up a little bit more quickly, so it's interesting sometimes when she jumps back after some months and some time, and I'm like, Rufus still is wearing that same wig from a couple scenes back, in the book.
So
Yeah, or have them missing a tooth or something. Like you always see kids, like, just speaking for ourselves, we get to see your nephews maybe every 3 or 4 months and sometimes 6 months, and they look different every single time we go back. Like maybe one's missing a tooth, maybe the haircuts change.
Again, lower budget. I think the set, if
right,
we had
but
makeup,
I just think if you could just put a little black thing over a tooth, like you do that for. I just think they needed a little bit more creativity with that.
Yes, to show the time lapse a little bit more succinctly.
Agreed.
The show is short, like 8 episodes.
Right.
And so I think they could have, at some points it felt a drag, and then other points it felt like they didn't have enough time, especially towards the ending.
They played us at the end. Sound off if you felt played as well.
There is a huge important, like, traumatic event that happens where Dana leaves Kevin behind on accident, and years go by that Kevin's there. I think like 8 years. So he's a modern American man who has to learn to live in the antebellum South, and sort of Dana feels guilty over that in the book, and we experience that. Wow, something got me. Amber is still sick, y'all.
No, something. Thank you.
Something's had you. Satan's had a hold on you for 3 months.
For 2 months. Okay, I'm better at. Thank you.
Do you have any? Sounds like what would you say? Would you recommend this for people to go see?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, me too.
Especially if you're like, I'm not really into the sci-fi thing. I will say, I don't know. I'm trying to really think about if we weren't. Did I enjoy it? Absolutely. It would have been a little bit harder for me to get through if I hadn't read the book. I'll be honest, because the book is like so well written and so exciting, and there is so much TV to watch right now. Mm-hmm. So I don't know, but I mean, I think that is happening with everything, right? Like, I watched the first episode of Wednesday, and I was like, this is great, but I don't have to watch the whole series.
It was so good.
Yeah, but whereas I watched The Bear, and I'm like, oh, well, there goes my night. So it really just depends. And sound off if you're like, hey, Amber and Ben, I watched the first 2 episodes, and I was like, okay, I see what they're doing. Like, I don't, like, eventually this will either stop happening or whatever, but I don't know.
I think Kindred is a great book that Octavia Butler wrote. It's not my favorite book of her, but I want everyone to watch this so that more of her stories get to be shared with others. Like, I would love to have Lilith's Brood turned into a TV show. I would love to have Parable of the Sower. I think those stories are a little bit more unique.
Gotcha.
And
Lilith's Brood.
Kindred is sort of the slavery narrative, and how it affects us today is something that I think American television comes back to. Like, we've had this conversation before. Like, we get a slave movie.
We discussed a couple of slave movies on the,
And I think those are important. They should.
I always make this joke that, like, I don't want to get my eyebrows microbladed yet, because one day I might be in a slave movie or something, and I can't have, like, these perfectly arched eyebrows. And it's like,
what?
Because, okay, when you get your this is a horrible side note, but y'all are looking at my eyebrows right now. They're really tiny. If you get, or you're listening to how tiny my eyebrows are, if you get your eyebrows microbladed, they're like tattoos. They're like little tattoos that really define and make your eyebrows great. But if I maybe one day get cast in some sort of, Kindred, or I don't want to have perfect eyebrows.
Why not just a period piece like Bridgerton or something?
Or a period piece at all. Yeah, but I'm just saying, slave movies are still being made.
To is like slavery. Yeah.
Slave movies and TV is still constantly being made.
It's like, I sort of sad though when a black actress such as yourself thinks like, oh, I would love to do a period piece, and the one you automatically go to is the antebellum South, when there are lots of stories that.
Okay, name 3. You said Bridgerton.
The Woman King.
Is that a period piece?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's based on a true story.
Why have we still not seen that?
Yeah, that's shameful.
Fucking horrible. Okay. And when was Woman King set in?
And then also The Harder They Fall.
Oh, I love that too.
Yeah.
I have to look at Regina King's eyebrows in that.
Yeah. See if they're microbladed.
Well, okay, because I talked about this before. I actually did get cast in something. When is it filming? Who the fuck knows? But I'm going to be a character in the 70s.
Yeah.
So even that, I don't want to have perfect eyebrows.
Fair enough.
But since we were talking about a literal slave movie, I was like, oh yeah, this is another reason I'm going to hold off on the brows. I can't be in the big house with perfectly arched brows. Cringe, right?
Wow.
All right. I love you. Anyway, thank you so much for y'all sound off about the eyebrows. Thank you so much for listening to another episode of the Sci-Fi Side Podcast. Up next, we're going to be watching a movie. We're going to be watching The Nanny. Wait, Nanny or The Nanny?
I think it's just Nanny.
I think I'm thinking of The Nanny. We're going to be watching Nanny, and it is not starring Fran Drescher. It is a horror movie, and it's directed by, oh my gosh, my computer went blank, but let me go get her name because we got a woman director. We got a black woman.
Nikyatu
Jusu directed Nanny. It's going to be on Amazon Prime. It's already there. We promise we won't leave y'all waiting again this many weeks. We really did miss y'all. Please let us know what y'all thought of Kindred, and we will see y'all next week for the show. Bye, y'all.